Nelson now sits at less than 1%.
We still don't understand how they went in these two counties and had a dramatic increase. Another 93,000 votes were cast, or somehow they came up with 93,000 votes after election night. We still don't know how they came up with that. So we're trying to figure out exactly what happened.
Griff Jenkins live from Lauderhill, Florida this morning for us. Griff.
Good morning, Sandra. They've been up all night long, election officials and attorneys here. Of course, the recount is beginning in all 67 counties. But here in Broward, you see the canvassing board behind me. They're here along with attorneys for the Democrats and Republicans. But what we've all been watching is inside this room right here. Initially, 10 voting machines to do the recount. 2 more added at about 4 a.m. brought in from Tallahassee. They're just calibrating them now. That's what you see those officials doing in there. Then they'll start the recount. But actually, before they even get there, they're trying to get a total number of ballots that were cast before they do that because of Governor Scott's lawsuit, which focuses, among other things, on the supervisor here, Brenda Snipes, whether or not she failed to account for a total number of ballots. It's a contentious time already, and we spoke with the Democrat attorney, Mitchell Berger, about Brenda Snipes. Here's what he had to say. Listen.
Brenda Snipes might be underpersoned and might have too much thrust upon her suddenly. I don't think there's anyone who thinks she is dishonest or lacks integrity.
But Dr. Snipes is, of course, the focus of much of the accusations from Governor Scott's lawsuit. And I asked the Republican attorney here, Bill Scheer, if he had any confidence in Snipes. Here's what he said.
Zero. I have zero from the beginning. I've been involved with her and her operation and the embarrassment that she causes to Broward County. You know, it's Florida because of what the way she runs her operation.
Once they start counting the ballots, they'll continue 24/7 to get it in by Thursday. That's the deadline for the second unofficial results. And if those results show a 0.25%, 0.25% or less separating the two candidates, it will go to a manual hand recount. Finally, Sandra, I'll just add that north of me in Palm Beach County, the supervisor of elections up there, Susan Booker, says already she's not going to be able to meet that Thursday deadline. Sandra?
All right, Griff Jenkins, thank you.
You can smell the lawsuit already, can't you? Hugo Gurdon, editorial director, Washington Examiner. Can't you, Hugo? Good morning to you.
You certainly can, Bill.
There's a set of rules in Florida based on state law. You report to the state how many ballots are cast. Do we know even today, almost a week after the election, what that number was in Broward County?
No, we don't. And you're absolutely right. Florida law requires that within half an hour of polls closing, the election supervisor should report how many ballots there are and how many are yet to be counted. It isn't known how many there are, and Brenda Snipes, beautifully named, sniping for Democrats, has not fulfilled her obligations under the Florida law. As recently as Friday, court found that she had been, secretly opening early ballots. Broward County found a whole stack of previously unknown ballots in an office somewhere. There's a lot of confusion about what the actual numbers are, and frankly, Brenda Snipes has a record of this. She should have been fired ages ago.
Well, Rick Scott was the governor at the time. He had that option and passed on it. He told Chris Wallace this over the weekend about his Democratic challenger, Bill Nelson. Watch.
Bill Nelson's a sore loser. He's been in politics way too long, 42 years. He just won't give up, and he's saying, if you're not a citizen, your vote ought to count. He's saying that fraudulent ballots ought to count. That's wrong.
It just seems to me like this is a mess. And Hugo, I don't know how it's sorted out. Do you?
Yeah, no, it's an absolute mess, Bill. You're completely right. And I think that to some extent that's what the Democrats in Broward County and Palm Beach really want. The more mud that they can muddy the waters with, the more confusion they can create, the more likely it is that the courts will say, okay, let's dispense with the regulations that govern all the other 65 counties in the state and allow all these votes, the questionable ones, the ones where the signatures don't match, the ones where let's just dispense with all the rules and let these places which are heavily Democratic play under different rules than the Republicans. And that's what the Democrats want. That's what Mark Elias, who's a very formidable election lawyer, and
he's there
plays
working
tough
on behalf of Nelson. Let me get to Elias in a moment here, but I just want to establish what the guidelines are. Florida Department of State, here's the quote now. The deadlines for submitting the results of the recount are laid out in Florida law, and the law does not give the Secretary of State any authority to grant extensions. Florida law clearly states that if a county does not submit the results by the deadline, then the results on file at that time take their place. So the deadlines for this week are Thursday at 3 o'clock. And
exactly.
If the race is tighter than it is at the moment, they'll go to a hand recount, then the deadline would be Sunday afternoon. And
right.
Some of these counties are already saying they can't do that, Hugo.
Yeah, they are. You're right. 3 p.m. for a machine count. If that reduces the margin to less than 0.25%, it's meant to go to a hand count. The suggestion that it's impossible to do this is another way of muddying the waters. It's weird that these places which have a history of not getting elections right somehow are incapable of doing what the rest of the country does and the rest of the state does. It'll probably go to a hand count, but they're already saying they can't meet the machine count, and this is another way of confusing matters and getting the legal process, the litigation process, to take over what is the electoral process.
I want to squeeze this in. Mark Elias, the attorney you mentioned there, working for Bill Nelson. He's in Florida. A few moments ago, he tweeted this: breaking, no Floridian should have their rightful vote denied because of mail/post office delays. We are suing to protect these ballots. Hashtag count all the votes. Sounds like 2000 right there. Who follows the law if no one enforces the law?
Right. If you don't follow the law, of course, Mark Elias is right, and it's a sort of bromide to say legal votes should be counted. But if the votes fall outside the law, if they're not filled out properly, if they're not counted in time, etc., then they fall outside the law. They become votes that need to be disqualified. And there are, if the Democrats in Broward County and Palm Beach are too incompetent to do their jobs, they shouldn't be doing those jobs.
Hugo, thank you. More to come. Thank you for that analysis. I got a lot coming up on this today. Rick Scott, Senior Advisor Brad Todd is here with reaction on what's happening down there in the legal strategy. Next hour, we're going to talk to former Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris. She, of course, played a pivotal role in the recount of 2000. So we're butterfly ballot, Sandra. We're hanging Chad. We got it all. Going back to Tallahassee today.
Well, we look forward to having Scott Senior Advisor Brad Todd on. We'll certainly get an update on where things stand at this hour.
Good luck, Florida.
All right. Tensions in France. Leaders taking aim at President Trump over nationalism. But President Trump tweeting this morning with his own response. Retired four-star General Jack Keane will join us on that.
Also, will it be a subpoena party for the Democrats, where the incoming committee chairs are now signaling over the weekend about what is to come?
The president said he has not discussed the Mueller investigation with Whitaker. He's made that very clear the other day. It would be a mistake to try to shut down the Mueller investigation in the way that you describe it, because we've been so compliant.
Sea off the coast of Japan. The U.S. 7th Fleet says the FA-18 Hornet, like this one pictured here, was conducting routine operations off the aircraft carrier USS Ronald Reagan when it suffered a mechanical problem. The crew is expected to be okay. This is the second crash involving the USS Ronald Reagan in less than a month.
Well, we are not scattershot. We are not doing any investigation for a political purpose, but to seek the truth. So I think a word that you could describe about how Democrats will go forward in this regard is we will be very strategic.
So there's the Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi laying out its strategy as the White House may be bracing now for a barrage of subpoenas and countless other legal challenges. Former New Hampshire Governor John Sununu, former Chief of Staff to President H.W. Bush. How you doing, Gov? Good morning to you. Have you recovered from last Tuesday yet, sir? Yes or no?
Almost, not quite. Almost.
Okay.
The green wave of money made a difference.
The green, yes, it did. And speaking of that, here's Adam Schiff from over the weekend. He says subpoenas are the sexy part of the story. Watch here on NBC.
If he doesn't recuse himself, if he has any involvement whatsoever in this Russia probe, we are going to find out whether he made commitments to the president about the probe, whether he is serving as a back channel to the president or his lawyers about the probe, whether he's doing anything to interfere with the probe. Mr. Whitaker needs to understand that he will be called to answer, and any role that he plays will be exposed to the public.
So that answer there, talking about Matthew Whitaker, now acting AG, lets you know what they're getting ready for. What do you think it is?
Well, it looks like the Democrats are hell-bent on making the mistake of focusing on investigations instead of cooperation. They don't seem to understand that Maxine Waters and Schiff are outside of a handful of commentators at CNN. They're looked at as clowns around the country. So if that's the best the Democrats are going to put forward after having won the House, 2020 is going to look awfully, awfully good for the Republicans.
Well, just not to pile on, but Jerry Nadler, who's going to head the Judiciary Committee in the House, Democrat from New York, said, our very first witness on or after January 3rd will be the subpoena or to summons, if necessary, Mr. Whitaker. So clearly they have him initially in their sights.
You know, they're going to find out that's a clean operation. So if he's in their sights, they're focusing on the wrong area, if there is any right area to focus on.
Well, Axios had this headline at daybreak today. Democrats load subpoena cannon with 85-plus Trump targets. You think there's going to be a battle inside the party as to how this strategy plays out? I mean, Nancy Pelosi
in the Democrat Party?
Yeah, in the Democratic Party. She says it won't be scattershot, but how do you control it?
There won't be a battle, but there'll be freelancing. You'll have Schiff freelancing. You'll have Waters freelancing. I think Jerry Nadler is a little bit more disciplined in his process, but they'll all be playing the game. They all love the cameras. They're all looking for the publicity, and the more they do that, the more fractured their party will look and the more unfocused they'll look in terms of meeting their responsibility in trying to develop some legislation on the big issues like immigration, keeping the economy moving forward, and trying to make sure that the departments in federal government are properly funded. We had a good
It's an interesting point, and it's an interesting balance that you're going to have to find here. Let me come back to that, but I just want to complete this quote. Adam Schiff said, let's face it, the investigations are sexy. They're interesting. The legislative process is less so. It's much less dramatic. True?
That explains Adam Schiff's mindset. He has been doing this even when he was in the minority. He has no interest in legislation. He has no interest in being a congressman. His only interest is finding every day a couple of sound bites and running to CNN and MSNBC and trying to get his face in front of the camera.
Well, last point then, summarize how you think their strategy will play out. What do you see happening over 2 years?
Actually, there's one thing that could happen that kind of puts a damper on all of this, and that is if Mueller does what's responsible, gets his report out before the end of the year, it's the Mueller part of the whole process that is the catnip, if you will, for all those investigations. If he gets his report out, it kind of puts a big pin in all their balloons.
Thank you, sir, for your time today. John Sununu, former governor of New Hampshire. Nice to see you, sir.
Yeah, well, we're here to serve, so we'll just put our heads down and keep pushing through this thing.
Thank you. Hang in there. Thank you very much.
Sometimes it is without words, you know.
Huge job to do there, and you can just hear they have been working around the clock. Yeah. There has been no break.
Yeah, just listen to a lot of the folks who have lost their homes, too, over the weekend from Paradise. I mean, they look around and they see this town that's just been annihilated by these flames that came in so fast, and they're left to look at the charred remains.
Sorting through the rubble this morning.
Talking about dozens who are dead, and, you know, there was a number over the weekend, Sanders suggested more than 200 could be missing. That could be cell phone lines are down. They could not contact them. Certainly, we hope that is the case, but we're a long way from resolving this in California.
And we'll continue following all of it for you.
In the meantime, from Florida, votes still being counted in Florida. And also, do not forget about this one. This is Arizona's nail-biter of a Senate race. The Democrat Kyrsten Sinema, Republican Martha McSally. How McSally is reacting as her opponent's lead expanded over the weekend. We'll check in on that.
Plus, tensions escalating in Florida as a statewide recount gets underway. Rick Scott's senior advisor, Brad Todd, will join us straight ahead as the Republican Senate candidate takes new legal action against state Democrats.
The America that I know would say that we shouldn't be standing on the street corners demanding that everyday Americans and everyday Floridians have their votes counted.
Straight days as a result of some of the softening on sanctions on Iran by the United States. And oil's back up today. Now the stock market's going down. So we'll have to figure out where this all goes from here. But oil is certainly being watched by investors as well as inflation. So coming off of that crazy whirlwind of an October for the stock market, investors really trying to find some direction this morning as we kick off the week.
Find some direction. That's that's what we're going with.
Just came up with that.
I love it. 9:32 now. Fox is alert. Want to head out to Arizona in that Senate race. Democratic Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema expanding her lead over the Republican opponent Martha McSally. They're still counting votes out there. Alicia Cunha is live in Phoenix, Arizona. Alicia, good morning there.
Hi, good morning, Bill. Yet nearly 220,000 votes have yet to be counted. And right now, as you mentioned, Democrat Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema is up by about 32,000 votes over Republican Martha McSally. The Sinema campaign said in a statement, with the latest ballot count, Kyrsten's lead is insurmountable. McSally's campaign in today's results would be her firewall, but as we expected, no firewall emerged. McSally has lost every batch of votes from Maricopa County, and today Kyrsten won by 6.25%, nearly double her overall performance in the county to date. We reached out to McSally on this, but got no response. On Saturday, her campaign released this. Today, our vote total grew at a greater rate than expected, and we expanded our vote margins in rural areas, counting mail-in ballots dropped off on Election Day. The latest release provides compelling evidence that the remaining uncounted ballots are favorable to Martha, and we will continue our effort to make sure all lawful ballots are counted. The Maricopa County Recorder, Democrat Adrian Fontes, has come under fire by the Arizona GOP and a staffer from the National Republican Senatorial Committee who, without evidence, floated the idea Fontes was cooking the books. Other Republicans hit back, including Mark Salter, former speechwriter and senior aide to the late Senator John McCain, tweeting, "Stop doing this, NRSC. McSally is losing fair and square, and she's underperforming in more than Maricopa County. All this does is poison our politics more. Despicable." The chair of the NRSC was asked about that on Meet the Press.
I think we do have a chance to win in Florida or in Arizona. I do think there is a path. We've seen it in the numbers. But I do think it's important that we protect the people of Arizona. We can't sit by and allow votes to be counted in Maricopa that would not be counted somewhere else.
The deadline on the ballot counting is 5 p.m. Wednesday. Bill?
Thanks, Alicia Cunha, live there in Phoenix, Arizona. More to come on that.
Okay, well, in Florida, a new statewide recount is in full swing. Officials looking at the governor's contest between Republican Congressman Ron DeSantis, who led Tallahassee Mayor Andrew Gillum by a thin margin when polls closed. The same goes for Republican Governor Rick Scott and incumbent Bill Nelson in Florida's contentious Senate race. Scott launching a series of lawsuits accusing Democrats of trying to steal the election.
We have very specific election laws in the state to try to prevent fraud. We had to go to court to force the supervised elections in Palm Beach County and Broward County to comply with the law, which is the law is there to prevent fraud. I've asked the Florida Department of Law Enforcement to go in and do an investigation to find out what happened here. But we clearly know the judges have already said they clearly violated the law.
Brad Todd is a senior advisor to Florida Governor and GOP Senate candidate Rick Scott. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So can you just give us an idea of where things stand at this moment?
Sure. Right now we're engaging in a machine recount in all 67 counties of Florida. 2 counties have completed it. The legal strategy for Governor Scott's campaign is very simple. We are insisting that Florida election law be followed. Bill Nelson's legal strategy is very different. His strategy is to ignore the law in Broward and Palm Beach County and overturn the law statewide. So I think that tells you who's going to come out on top in this count.
Strategy is to insist that the law be followed. What evidence do you have that it was not?
Well, easily. Last Tuesday night, the Florida law requires that every supervisor of elections announce the number of mail-in and paper absentee ballots that they have received. In Palm Beach and Broward County, that did not happen. The number continued to change after Tuesday night. Also, you have to update your website every 45 minutes with the total numbers. That has not happened in Palm Beach County. That website's been static since last Wednesday. Also saw this Saturday when final numbers had to be due to the state, they kept counting in Broward. We've gone to court to try to stop that count because you can't count after the rest of the state has turned their ballots in. The goal here is to get the law followed in Florida, insist that these 2 counties, which have defied court orders, the open records laws in Florida, a judge in Broward County has already ruled that Brenda Snipes violated the open records laws. These laws are all put in place to protect the integrity of the vote and prevent fraud.
By the way, there's a live picture up there as this recount is underway at this moment. Democrats have come out in full force calling this an act of desperation on the part of your candidate, Scott. How do you respond to that?
Well, first off, this lead is insurmountable. That's not my word. That's Bill Nelson's lawyer's word when he's been involved in recounts with margins even smaller than this. So what's going to happen on Thursday is this machine recount's going to be complete. Bill Nelson's going to still be far behind, and he's going to face a choice. His lawyers get paid a lot. They bill by the hour. They'd like to do this all winter. But Bill Nelson has a legacy to think about. He's been in politics since I was 2 years old, and he has to decide on Thursday when he's going to trail significantly. Does he want his entire legacy to be painted as the guy who wouldn't go away when he was voted out by the people of Florida?
Well, you mentioned Nelson's attorney, Mark Elias, and this is the latest tweet coming from him and that team. Breaking, no Floridians should have their rightful vote denied because of mail post office delays. We are suing to protect these ballots. Hashtag count all the votes. A new suit coming?
Look, he'll sue as long as someone will pay him to do it. The law in Florida is very clear, and we have these laws in place to protect the integrity of the elections. If Mark Elias or Bill Nelson didn't like these election laws, these election fraud laws, they should have sued months ago. They're only suing because they're behind, they've lost, the people of Florida made their decision. The time to change these laws, if they don't like them, was a long time ago, but everyone agreed this was the way to prevent fraud in Florida.
As far as the national attention that this is receiving this morning, how does your team, and working with Rick Scott on this, how are you guys responding to that this morning? Because the country is watching this closely.
Well, the country always watches Florida's elections closely. It's our nation's most preeminent swing state. Governor Scott is now undefeated. He's won 4 very close elections, and the reason he's won them is because he does a great job for the people of Florida. He is the calmest guy in the room at all times. He knows that the people of Florida have chosen him to be their U.S. Senator, and his mind's focused on what he's going to do in Washington.
All right, Brad, I only have a few seconds left. How does this go? We keep looking at the live picture of the recount underway at this moment. Final thoughts?
Well, this is going to end on Thursday with a machine recount that shows Rick Scott well ahead. Then Bill Nelson has a choice to make. What does he want his legacy to be?
All right, Brad Todd, thank you for coming on this morning.
Thanks a lot for having me.
More on this coming up. Former Florida Secretary of State Katherine Harris is our headliner next hour. Harris played a big role in the state's presidential vote recount back in 2000, so it will be great to get her perspective on all of this.
Looking forward to that. Another alert now. New report showing that recent satellite images that reveal North Korea is actually expanding its ballistic missile sites. Lucas Tomlinson's live on that from the Pentagon. What's up, Lucas? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. More troubling news out of the rogue communist regime. Despite North Korea suspending its missile tests over the past year, new satellite imagery obtained by the Washington think tank CSIS shows North Korea has expanded its ballistic missile program, going to 16 different secret sites. While North Korea pledged to scrap a major missile site, it appears work continues on its nuclear weapons program. U.S. officials say North Korea could have up to 60 nuclear warheads. President Trump plans to meet North Korean leader Kim Jong-un early next year. Last week, the president and his UN ambassador sounded pleased with the negotiations.
We're very happy how it's going with North Korea. We think it's going fine. We're in no rush. We're in no hurry. The sanctions are on.
You still expect to meet Kim Jong-un?
Excuse me, wait.
Sorry, sir.
The sanctions are on. The missiles have stopped. The rockets have stopped. The hostages are home.
We stopped military exercises, so we have given a lot of carrots up until now. We're not going to get rid of the stick because they haven't done anything to warrant getting rid of the sanctions yet.
Also last week, North Korea canceled high-level meetings and talks in New York with Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Bill?
Thank you, Lucas. Lucas Tomlinson, something to watch as we shout for the Pentagon. Thank you. Sunday Night Football, Cowboys.
Race, what a nation holds dearest, what gives it life, what makes it grace, and what is essential, its moral values.
So that was a headline, got some attention. President Macron in Paris taking a swipe at President Trump in France on Sunday. They had a chilly start, but both leaders agreed Europe should spend more on its own defense. Retired four-star General Jack Keane, chairman for the Institute Study of War and a Fox News senior strategic analyst. Sir, how you doing? Welcome back, fresh in from Vietnam. We welcome you back to our nation's capital.
Thank you.
I want to back up a little bit because I think a lot of the context for this visit has been lost. Here was the comment from Macron on a radio interview right before Air Force One landed on Friday. He said, "We have to protect ourselves with respect to China, Russia, and even the United States of America. When I see President Trump announcing that he's quitting a major disarmament treaty which has formed in the 1980s Euro missile crisis that hit Europe, who is the main victim?" he asks. Europe and its security. We need a Europe which defends itself better alone without just depending on the United States in a more sovereign manner. Well, that did not go without a tweeted response. The president said this right before landing. President Macron of France has just suggested, he wrote, that Europe build its own military in order to protect itself from the U.S., China, and Russia. Very insulting, but perhaps Europe should first pay its fair share of NATO, which the U.S. subsidizes greatly. I just want to get that all out there because I think a lot of the reporting over the weekend missed a lot of that, General. What is your view about how that is going over?
Well, certainly there's Trump and Macron have grown into their differences. Some of this is actually internal problems for Macron because his popularity has plummeted down into the low 30s. There is a populism movement that's moving against him in the country because of immigration, domestic and economic problems that he has. All that said, I mean, it is stunning that he associates the United States as being a security problem when it is the United States that has led the effort, Bill, to strengthen NATO, and no voice has been louder than this president's in doing that. We also, not just about the money, we have pushed troops out into Eastern Europe to stand against Russian aggression. And to say that the United States somehow is a problem here, Putin is the guy who broke the intermediate ballistic missile treaty by developing that said missile. The only way we're going to get him back into that treaty is a willingness to come out of it and develop a counter to that ourselves. And that is exactly what the Department of Defense is recommending to the president. We will eventually get that treaty back, but we're not going to get it by sitting on our hands looking at Putin violating it.
Okay, so defense was one issue, nationalism was the other. Here's the headline from the Associated Press. It says, Trump largely alone as world leaders take aim at nationalism. Now, what is your view of that, given light of the comments that we just played a moment ago from Macron, who you rightly admit his approval numbers are in the 30s in France?
Well, they seem to be redefining nationalism. I think if we went around the United States and the world and asked people, what does nationalism mean? I think the common response would be love of country. And to somehow imply that a nationalistic love of country is self-serving to the exclusion of others certainly doesn't apply to the United States. We just demonstrated the United States is leading in NATO. The United States in the Middle East is standing shoulder to shoulder, Bill, with our allies there against Iranian aggression. The United States is the indispensable country pushing back on China's economic and political warfare and their militarism of the South China Sea. I just talked to some of those countries. They absolutely respect the United States leadership that's taken on this role. So here we are, Macron saying we're self-serving, we're turning into ourselves when we're the indispensable world leader that's helping countries with their own security problems.
No. General, thank you. Jack Keane, it's good to have you back home on U.S. soil, sir. Thank you very much.
Good talking to you, Bill.
Fox News alert, 8 people killed.
And back pain. But standing more and sitting less is better for you. It decreases back pain and increases circulation. That's why there's Veridesk, the sit-stand solution that helps people feel better and get more done. It's crafted to last a lifetime and comes fully assembled, ready to work. Get yours at Veridesk.com.
Some job boards give you tons of the wrong resumes. That's not smart. Then there's smart. ZipRecruiter finds people with the right skills, education, and experience for your job and actively invites them to apply. So you get qualified candidates fast. That's why ZipRecruiter is rated #1 by employers in the U.S. ZipRecruiter, the smartest way to hire. Try it for free at ZipRecruiter.com/Fox.
Fox News alert happening right now. New rocket fire near the Israel-Gaza border at this hour. This following another round of violence that left 8 people dead, including an Israeli soldier. Trey Yingst is there live now. Trey?
Sandra, last night, 7 Palestinian militants and 1 Israeli soldier were killed inside the Gaza Strip during a botched Israeli operation. In response, there was a lot of Israeli airstrikes inside Gaza. Also, Hamas firing a series of rockets into southern Israel. But everything had been calm up until just a few moments ago when here along the Israel-Gaza border, a series of rockets were fired towards Israel. And we have seen just in the past few minutes a number of interceptions from the Israeli